Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast, coming to you shortly before midnight from the Media Garden of the Billie Jean King National Tennis Centre on day 8 of the US Open. A huge day for Matt Roberts and his dormant volcano theory.
It's happening. There's volcanic ash all over the Arthur Ashe Stadium right now because Marketa Vondrousova is erupting. And Barbora Krejcikova is a dormant volcano as well, and she has erupted. They're here, and they're dangerous, and they might be in the mix.
I'll say, yeah, volcanic ash everywhere around the Billie Jean King National Tennis Centre. Barbora Krejcikova and Marketa Vondrousova have stolen the show here today, kind of from under everyone's noses. They both played the 2 matches of the day. They've probably put in the 2 performances of the day, although Carlos Alcaraz and his behind-the-back trick shot is probably going to have something to say about that. But, yeah, for me, David, those 2, can't believe I'm saying this, have stolen the show. They've erupted.
Yes, and maybe we're going to have a dormant volcano list to go with your backhand list at some point. Anyway, it's only a 2-person list, apparently. But it is... It's bang on, because the performances they put on pretty wildly different in terms of the manner in which they unfolded. Krejcikova's was so dramatic and snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, whereas Marketa Vondrousova, I think that was a virtuoso performance tonight. I was just remarking to Matt before we started recording that I don't really think I've ever watched her play at her best in person before. I was around at the Wimbledon final that she won, but I don't think I was close up. I was probably watching it on a TV. I wasn't commentating on it. I really took a close interest in this tonight, both on TV in the first set and a half and then courtside with you both later on. The way she played tonight made your heart sing. I mean... for a start, it was really quick between the points. They're flying between the points. It's snappy
David.
Tennis. It was wonderful to watch. You know, I was actually keeping an eye on the shot clock when they went up to serve. There was always 10 seconds minimum left on the shot clock when Rybakina and Vondrousova served. But, you know, Vondrousova she found shots today of every type, whether they were power, passing shots, lobs, drop shots, serves, absolutely the lot.
Yeah, we just come from that match on Arthur Ashe Stadium, so we're all a little bit high on it, and maybe there's a bit of recency bias, but I loved this Marketa Vondrousova performance so much. She's such a clever tennis player, Matt. So
clever. And, you know, if she were around more, I truly think she would be very close to the top of my list of favourite players. Like, when she plays like this, it's just such a joy. She makes me want to play tennis. That's how I feel watching her. I'm like, I want to try that. Obviously I can't do it, but I just want to try it. It's just so cool watching her play. The way she constructs these points, and like, I don't want to necessarily like compare players to players, but I guess the point I'm making here is tennis is so much about matchups, because we saw at Wimbledon Emma Raducanu beat Marketa Vondrousova pretty comfortably. We saw the other night Emma Raducanu look kind of with no answers of how to play Elena Rybakina, and then today we see Vondrousova come up against Rybakina and decode her and nullify her and bring out errors that Raducanu just wasn't able to extract. You know, that match we saw the other day of Rybakina was hitting up and down the court, and Rybakina does that, I think, better than anyone, and was played all of that match against Raducanu on her terms like that. Today, you just can't do that against Marketa Vondrousova. Firstly, Marketa Vondrousova has turned into a serve bot this tournament. She did it against Jasmine Paolini, absolutely served her off the court. And today, in crucial moments, particularly that final game, 15-40 down, she just literally served Elena Rybakina off the court. And when you think of the Vondrousova serve, you think of the lefty slider out wide. But it's not necessarily that. It's the big one down the tee which has been so effective.
13 aces to Rybakina's 5.
Incredible.
I just learned that stat from the Czech Czech journalist sitting next to us who was shaking his head in disbelief.
Right. But then in the rallies as well, the way she was able to get Rybakina moving side to side, give her different looks, whether it be a slice, whether it be a lob defensive shot, whether it be taking a return and getting width on it just to get Rybakina out of her strike zone. She had it all going on. And I think the portion of the match that impressed me the most was the 2 games she played from 1-love down in the third set, because at that point, despite everything that Vondrousova was doing, it seemed like Rybakina might have a level that was just too good. Like, even in spite of all this wizardry shot making from Vondrousova, Rybakina was kind of like, well, my power's going to win out here. And she just entered a zone of hitting the ball so cleanly. Backhand took over the match, and I think she won 9 points in a row, end of the first set, start of the second set, and it looked like, okay, she's going to take over here. But then Vondrousova, having played all the shots in the book except the drop shot all night, suddenly pulled out the drop shot, had a couple of them right at the start of that final set, and won both points. One with a forehand pass after the drop shot, and one with a lob after the drop shot. And that just seemed to change the momentum back in her favour. And then she went about unpicking Rybakina again. It was superb.
I found that absolutely incredible how she did that, because it wasn't really a tactical change, because she put the drop shot away after that. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to win from the back of the court, I need to start slicing and dicing and drop shotting Rybakina. It was, I'm going to do this to disrupt this, to get you off this ethereal plane that you've ascended to, which she absolutely did. And from that point onwards, she changed the temperature of the match. She changed the whole course of the match with those 2 points. It felt like to me. It was wizardry.
Would you believe it? When I was watching those particular rallies that you referenced, my mind went back to a match I commentated on at Wimbledon many years ago between Gisela Dolko and Maria Sharapova, where Dolko did exactly that to Sharapova. She just suddenly chopped down on the ball a handful of times, brought her in, passed her, and eventually discombobulated her and knocked her out of the tournament. And it's hard to believe when you see the sweetness of the strike of Rybakina, particularly the way she played against Rybakina the other day. And she did bring that form into tonight for the most part. I thought such a high quality all the way through. It was one of those where you just kept feeling good about what you're watching, like really uplifted, because so many of the rallies are finishing with winners.
And so much the crowd stayed. It was a decent crowd for that match. I know helped along by the fact that the Djokovic match was really quick, and a lot of people would have wanted some more tennis for their high ticket price tag, but it was a really good atmosphere in there. And those aren't 2 tennis players that would be considered huge names here in New York, or that necessarily are known for their auras, but they held the attention of the crowd tonight in a really noticeable way. I thought Giri Nathan, the fantastic tennis writer we had on the show a couple of weeks ago promoting his Alcaraz Sinner book Changeover, which is excellent, he wrote piece yesterday in the Second Serve, part of it describing the experience of watching tennis on Ash and that loud murmur that you get throughout the tennis, no matter kind of what match is happening. The sort of distracted, sort of low level, not even low level, like mid and loud level sometimes, just thrum of New York City happening and seeming to not particularly be paying attention to the tennis. And okay, it wasn't a full crowd, totally full crowd in for this match, but it was pretty quiet in there. They were quite spellbound, I thought, by that match. It really captured the attention.
And I think that was particularly important because one of the lines that Giri had in that piece is, what good is tennis without its tennis sounds? And one of the best things about being in the stadium for a Rybakina match is the sound the ball makes off the strings. And we were able to hear that tonight. People were engaged, they were in this match, and that just added to it. It's such a good line, that, because when you're in the stadium, you do notice the sound of Rybakina's ball is different to other players. I don't know if I can quite describe how it's different, but it goes through you a little bit. It's a purer sound. It's louder, quite frankly, than other strikes of a tennis ball.
And the flight of the ball looks different as well, particularly from those seats that we sit inside on. You can see the arc of the ball over the net, and it just looks different to me to anybody else.
And as David said, like, yes, there were a lot of Rybakina errors today. There were also a hell of a lot of moments where her ball striking was incredible, like top level. But the errors feels like an absolutely classic, going back to our big conversation we had in the summer, unforced errors, and is there even an unforced error? Because none of those misses that Rybakina had today were happening in isolation. You know, they were happening because Vondrousova had extracted them out of her by manipulating the ball as she did in a way that Rybakina just hadn't faced in this tournament so far, and wouldn't face against anyone else, really. It was quite something to witness.
And she will now face Vondrousova, Aryna, Sabalenka, the top seed and defending champion, in the quarter-final. And you might think, well, brilliant news for Sabalenka, that Vondrousova's taken Rybakina out. And maybe it is good news just. But Vondrousova is not great news for Sabalenka, is she? I mean, she's really, really troubled her in the past. I know they met in Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago, and Sabalenka was quite a convincing winner. But it's 5-4. The head-to-head, and I don't think Vondrousova fears Sabalenka at all, and I think the match she's played tonight will be really great preparation for that quarter-final.
Yeah, well, I think she'll view herself as a player that if she's on form, she causes trouble for people, because she has answers. She does hurt people. I thought it was a very convincing performance, though, from Sabalenka tonight against Kristina Buksha. I mean, I think you would expect it to be. But my big takeaway from the day of those two matches that we've referenced apart is big names turning up and meaning business. This is where most of the top players just drew a line, and they looked different. They looked what they are. They looked top players, and I think Aryna Sabalenka's part of that group.
Vondrousova, incidentally, she was quite tearful in the on-court interview, wasn't she, with James Blake? You don't often see that from her, and it's just a reminder of what a rocky road it has been. I think 2 surgeries since she won Wimbledon, and really long periods in the wilderness, and I'm sure lots of doubt and lots of low moments, and another example of a player that just because they're not necessarily emoting on the court doesn't mean they don't care. So I'm really thrilled for Marketa Vondrousova, and as much as when the draw came out I was hyped about Rybakina Sabalenka, I'm potentially more hyped for Vondrousova Sabalenka.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because Sabalenka does have some stuff that Rybakina doesn't have. I think she's a much better mover, I would say. I think she'll be less bothered by the side-to-side nature of the rallies against Vondrousova. She's also plays a bit more spin to kind of counter Vondrousova's own spins.
I think the spin's quite important, Not only that, but clearance over this net, because if you hit this net, the ball comes back. It doesn't dribble over.
Yeah, there's very few.
And I think that hurts players like Rybakina who aren't giving much of a distance between the ball and the net.
Yeah, so I could see it being a match where at the end of it we're talking about the little variety elements that Sabalenka's added. I think there'll be times where she hits through everyone. Like, she can just overpower you. She can do that, but I think she'll need the subtleties in her game as well. And I know that head-to-head is very, very close. You do have to go back to, I think it's Indian Wells 2018 for Vondrousova's last win on a hard court against Sabalenka. I think she's tended to have success on clay and grass, right, against her. So it just seems to me that sort of the surface might favour Sabalenka here in that matchup.
Sabalenka, incidentally, very comfortable 6-1, 6-4 in the final match of the day on Armstrong today. It was just one big order of play on Armstrong today. No day session, no night session. Sabalenka was the fourth and final match-up. I heard from Sky Sports in the UK, their coverage this morning, that Sabalenka had been offered the choice of either the second match on Ash night session or that fourth slot on Armstrong, and she elected for the fourth slot on Armstrong, anticipating it to be, I guess, that bit earlier going on than the final slot on Ash, which proved to be the case. And
she did not have faith in Tomas Machac, and she was right.
She was absolutely right. Not much to report from Sabalenka against Buksha. Exactly the match you would have expected, apart from Christina Buksha unexpectedly whipping up the crowd. That was my one unexpected moment from this match.
Well, she did tell me, didn't she, that she was looking forward to a night session, and she made the most of it.
She embraced it. Staying on Armstrong, and the other match of the day, Barbora Krejcikova erupting to beat Taylor Townsend 1-6, 7-6, 6-4 in 3 hours and 4 minutes, 15-13 in that second set tiebreak. She saved Krejcikova 8 match points at the end of that second set, 7 of them in the tiebreak, and only one of those was a Taylor Townsend error. I mean, those are the headlines. That by no means tells the story of this match, which was absolutely extraordinary. But it does tell you quite a lot about Barbora Krejcikova.
Yeah, she does not hold back when she's under the gun. And in fact, she played her very best tennis when she was in that position. And I think that isn't that much of a surprise today, because this is a woman who's won 2 Grand Slam titles. You don't do that unless you've got the goods when you're under pressure and the back's against the wall. And the fact that she found the lines was pretty extraordinary. I mean, those 8 match points included being 6-3 down, and in that second set tie break, 3 match points in a row. The 2 of them were on Krejcikova's serve, and then when she saved those, I remember turning to you both and I said, I think Townsend better win this one. You know, I still didn't think she would get quite as many more chances as she got if she didn't get that one. And there was the one most memorable shot of the lot from Krejcikova, which I think was an inside-out backhand winner down the line, which caught the very last lick of paint on that line. And the crowd thought it was out, and Townsend thought it was out. And then she looked at the umpire, and the umpire put the palm downwards to say that it was in. And the atmosphere, the mood inside that stadium. I mean, I think people still thought even then that it would end up being Townsend winning. I did. But my goodness, that was an extraordinary moment. And yeah, she took it on, did Krejcikova, when it really mattered, and she made those shots.
The kids with their giant tennis balls thought it was over, didn't they?
It was incredible. That sight.
It was like a landslide. It was like a mudslide, seeing all of these children rush down the aisles with their enormous tennis balls to get in position to get an autograph at the end of the match. They thought their moment had come and they'd been unleashed. I've actually never seen anything quite like that before. And then when they finally realised that the match hadn't finished and we would be going on, they all had to they all plopped to the floor at the same moment.
To go.
And the tiebreak went on for so long. They
were sat there in the aisle clutching their giant tennis balls.
That point was at 6-7. That was that match point, and then it ended up being 15-13. You know, they were like David kneeling down during that really long tiebreak at Queen's with Goran Ivanisevic all those years ago.
Correct.
Suddenly caught out. But yeah, look, I've written down here: inside in forehand winner, inside out forehand winner. Townsend missed forehand passing shot. Townsend missed backhand wide.
I think that was the unforced error.
Yeah. The passing shot forced error, I would say. Like, she didn't quite hit it cleanly, but I'd say forced error. Wrong footing backhand winner onto the line is the one we've talked about there. I think maybe the most extraordinary of the lot, the backhand volley winner that she hit at 10-11, Krejcikova, because I think she slightly hesitated, didn't really know how to hit the volley. She was sort of in no man's land, just behind the service line. It was a really awkward spot to have to hit a volley from, and she just caressed it with perfect control back behind Townsend and short and out of reach. It was a brilliant shot. I don't think many players in the world would have had that control to be able to hit that. She then hit a forehand return winner on the 7th match point, and then an unreturned out wide serve on the 8th. Like, it was brave tennis in the biggest moments from Krejcikova. And what made it all the more dramatic was that in this incredible, 28-point tiebreak, we've talked there about these remarkable moments of, I'm going to use the word, clutchness from Krejcikova. There were just sprinkled in there the odd moment where she had a shocker. Like, she'd suddenly get a short backhand and dump it in the net, or not quite be able to control it. And that sense of drama, like, it was generally an incredibly high quality tiebreak, but there was enough just moments of, oh my God, what's she done there?
That you just had no idea what was coming. And
it was thrilling.
I love that feeling. Yeah. I said in one of our many group chats that Krejcikova showed us her floor and her ceiling all in one tiebreak, albeit a very long tiebreak, but it was everything. It was the full spectrum, and it was full heartbreak for Taylor Townsend, who personally I think did well to make that deciding set as competitive as she did. I feared for her sitting down at the end of that second set. It was actually Krejcikova that went off court, and Townsend just stayed on court, wrapped herself in a towel, and had a lot to think about.
Yeah, you're gonna have regrets, aren't you? Because you've had 8 match points, you're gonna be thinking about them. Kind of as we've described, I don't think she did too much wrong in those moments. I do put this down massively to Krejcikova stepping up. Like, yes, there's the backhand she missed. Yes, maybe she would have liked another. I think on one of the ones that was on her serve, I think she might have missed the first serve, but there wasn't that much that she did wrong. I think if she's gonna have regrets about that second set, it came earlier in the set. She was up a break. She was leading this match because Krejcikova was so flat at the start. Like,
she needed to take advantage while she was dormant,
right? Exactly,
and stop her erupting.
And because once Krejcikova gets into a match, she does not let it go.
This is it. She's both a dormant volcano in the macro sense and a dormant volcano in matches. You were calling it all along. I was saying, my God, Krejcikova looks sluggish and slow and flat, and you were saying, yeah, for now you've got to put the hammer down while she's like this, because she will wake up eventually.
And initially she did. I mean, 6-1 first set.
Yes.
And that was pretty dramatically one-sided match, but I mean, it's pretty similar to what happened against Emma Navarro in the previous round.
And in the start of that second set, Krejcikova just started to get into the Townsend service games, and she held a couple of them, and that was impressive. But the 3-1 game, I pinpointed this, 15-all. She had a backhand drive volley on top of the net, did Townsend, and she just dumped it in the net. And she ended up losing that game. And okay, it wasn't like a pivotal point in the game, it wasn't like a break point, but it did lead to a break of serve, and it just seemed a little bit careless. It seemed a little bit like she wasn't quite fully aware of just how ready to be a volcano Krejcikova was, how ready she was to erupt in this match. She had to kill it there and then. She ends up in the second set tiebreak getting all those match points. She still could have won it. And in the third, like when she went down a break, I thought that was it. But then she broke back immediately and had a game point to level it up. And Krejcikova hit David a backhand return winner down the line into the postage stamp to save that game point. And then eventually, Townsend didn't win another game after that. Like, Krejcikova just stepped up in those biggest moments, but devastating for Taylor Townsend. And the crowd were obviously so with her. Like Krejcikova was coming up with these ridiculous things, and it was pretty quiet in Armstrong. And yet whenever...
She had one guy, didn't she?
Yeah, one very loud guy. And yet whenever Townsend was doing some incredible stuff, and she really was, they were so with her. And, it's a shame to lose that vibe, that buzz, that energy that she's brought to this tournament. I am glad that at least, she went out in an epic match. You just don't wish that much heartbreak on anyone. That was brutal, and seeing how upset she was really tough to take. Yeah,
she was extremely upset. By the time she came into press, she was obviously still upset, but she had metabolised it remarkably. And I always have mixed feelings about that. I'm in awe of it, and it's obviously very impressive and in some ways very healthy, but on the other, there's always a part of me that's it's okay to feel your feelings. I do think sometimes they're wary of being criticised for complaining when they're multimillionaires that get to travel the world for a living. It's really fine to be devastated, but I do understand why there might be that wariness of how sort of feeling your feelings and being upset would be perceived. I'm not saying that's what's going on with Taylor Townsend, but I'd always have mixed feelings when a player comes in and seems to have so much perspective. I thought it with Ben Shelton the other day. I'm really upset, but don't worry, I know that I live a charmed life and I'm blessed and everything. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to have feelings.
Well, I was in that press conference for Taylor Townsend, and by the time she got in there, she was in control, and she explained it as if in terms of her coach and her had agreed, have a policy that you're allowed to sulk and feel sorry for yourself for 3 minutes, and that's it. And she said, I decided...
Wouldn't be enough for me.
She said, I decided to extend that to 10 for this one. And, there were a few laughs and so forth. But it was a very philosophical press conference. She wasn't in there full of regrets. She was giving props to Krejcikova for taking it. I think where I struggle a little, the question I asked her was remembering how Krejcikova was in her position several years ago as the world number one doubles player who wanted a singles career and was ranked too low to play the same tournaments as she could get into for doubles. And Townsend is in the 140s in the world. She's now going to go up to 111. But if you look at her year, most of the time she's playing qualifying in singles and she's playing the doubles tournaments. And I said, do you think maybe you'll switch your focus a little bit going forwards and change the way you do things? And she said no, because she thinks she plays better singles when she's playing doubles, and she gave me all the reasons why, and I think they're all very compelling. And she's absolutely convinced in her mind that she's on a trajectory to get to top 20, top 10 in the world and be competing for Grand Slam titles at the age of 29. Now, the level she's shown this week, I think she's shown she can live with top players and beat them, which is great. But you've got to be able to get that ranking up and be able to do it all the time. Or at least be in a position to compete. And if you're in the qualifying for these events and get a couple of losses there, you just don't make any progress.
Yeah, it's a little bit of catch-22, isn't it, with the ranking being where it is. She's now got Jessica Pegula, has Barbora Krejcikova in the next round. Pegula is so comfortable against Ann Lee in the first match of the day on Ash, 1 and 2, 54 minutes, not a whole lot to report from this one other than Pegula was fantastic, super solid, no second set wobbles, that we talked about that being kind of the pattern that her matches had followed. She was foot to the floor the whole way here. Krejcikova's won their last 2 matches. Obviously the crowd will be with Pegula here, but Krejcikova really doesn't mind that. She really doesn't. I asked her about that in her post-match press conference today. What's it like emotionally, even if you know it's not personal and they're not anti you, they're just pro the opponent, emotionally, what is that like to experience? And she was like, honestly, I don't mind at all. I kind of atmosphere is atmosphere. I really love it, and I do think she is the kind of character where that really is true. I don't think she's going to be bothered by the Arthur Ashe crowd being against her at all. And I don't know, I think Pegula might have a match on her hands, unless Krejcikova hits the wall. I think that's the risk here. This is 2 matches in a row that have been pretty exhausting, particularly today, emotionally and physically. 3 hours and 4 minutes. She hasn't had runs like this in her legs for a long time. Like, that's the big question, I think.
3 Americans in a row.
Yeah. I think she's a contrarian, Krejcikova, isn't she? I think she's enjoying being the American killer.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could be a really good match if she's not tired, because Pegula has suddenly hit the sort of form she wants, and is just dismissing people quickly. That's her kind of thing. So I hope we get a good Krejcikova, because I think then we get a good match.
And just incidentally, Krejcikova knew that she was playing Pegula. None of this "don't tell me who I'm playing" nonsense. Got to ask her proper questions today.
Really?
Thank you, Barbora. Okay, that's it for the women's. Come back for part 2 and we'll talk about the men. Welcome back to part 2 of the tennis podcast, where we turn our attention now to the men's results we've seen here in New York on day 8 of the tournament. And let's start with Carlos Alcaraz and Artur Rinderknech, because he played his part today. 7-6, 6-3, 6-4 for Alcaraz. Kind of exactly as we predicted, Rinderknech putting in a really good account of himself and actually making the scoreline a lot closer than perhaps we feared for him. But Alcaraz was unreal, and this is now the first time that he has made it to the quarterfinals of a slam without dropping a set.
Yeah, and that goes with the eye test, what we've been witnessing from him, because he's just looked, to me, he's looked the best player in the draw so far in this tournament, in the men's draw. And I actually thought in the first set it was a bit dicey, because Rinderknech was serving so well, and he said in his tunnel interview just before he came out, "I'm going to go for it." And he had such clarity in his eyes about that, because he knows the only way he was going to make any impact in this match was to go for his shots and try to hurt Alcaraz and actually keep the score close. Try to get that scoreboard pressure, and he achieved that. There were moments where you thought, oh, Alcaraz has got to 30 all in the game, but then boom, game, and he's staying with him. It's one of those where, Alcaraz got the important points at the end of it, and yet all you can think about is the one moment where he hit the behind-the-back shot, which I watched several times on a slow-motion replay from different angles straight afterwards, and with each shot, it became more and more astonishing, because he's running across, he's been brought in, he's running across the court, and the ball clips, I think, the top of the net and just wrong foots him, and so he overruns the ball, and rather than sort of panic, he just kind of put his racket behind his back, half volleyed the ball behind the back, straight out of the middle of the strings, with feel, to put it at the knees of Rinderknech at the net. It's absolutely astonishing. It was a feel behind the back, half volley. And even he couldn't quite... Well, I think he could believe it, but his first instinct was to turn around to Juan Carlos Ferrero with the smile of, "Did you see what I just did there?" and then we just kept getting these replays, and it, honestly, Rinderknech was smiling. The crowd were all looking at one another as if they'd just seen a ghost. And it will be one of the most memorable shots of the championships for sure.
Is it his best behind-the-back shot on Arthur Ashe Stadium?
There's the one against Sinner.
The one against Sinner in that semi-final. I think I prefer the one against Sinner because it's a more fun rally and it ends with a winner, and it's...
It annoys me that Rinderknech got a racket on this.
We're watching that when we get home to compare.
I think this one might be a tougher skill level because his reaction time is so minimal here, and as you said, it's the half volley nature of it that he puts out of the middle of his strings. That's hard to do not behind your back. Like, that's really hard to do a half volley off the middle of your strings.
It looks quick in slow motion. It's one of those.
It's crazy. I think just as an aesthetic, if we could just use AI to
get rid of Rybakina. Yeah, he ruined it.
Getting a racket on it, it would be perfection.
Really annoyed me.
Whereas the Sinner one, because it ends on a winner and it's a big moment in the set, it's probably more satisfying. But this one might be technically better. Is my take.
Fitness check. The knee's fine, isn't it, David?
Yeah. I mean, the moment he got
little hug, little leg rub, knee's fine.
Yeah, and a bit of reassurance. As we said the other day, the 8-year-old grazing his knee. You're all right. It's all right. Just get up. You'll be fine.
Rybakina hit a terrible underarm serve, I hear.
Yeah, that wasn't a vintage moment. But at least he had a go. But it was interesting. I mean, the thing is, his level didn't really drop. He kept on doing what he'd been doing. It's just that Alcaraz got better and more clutch and just started absolutely ripping the ball. It was a joy, really, and Alcaraz is exactly where he wants to be. There have been no mental letdowns. That's the difference.
And Charlie Eccleshare asked him in his post-match press conference about his reputation for being inconsistent relatively for a top player, and he said, look, you've reached your finals of the last 11 tournaments.
7, I think it is.
7, maybe I misheard. 11 did sound like a lot, but maybe it was a different stat. Anyway,
a sort of 7-11 mix up.
He quoted a stat very much supporting the Alcaraz is in fact now really quite consistent theory. And he put that to Alcaraz. He said, do you think that is an underrated area for your game? And I found his response fascinating, because almost always in English, Alcaraz, in response to a question, says, well, and then takes a few moments and considers what he wants to say, and I guess translates it in his head. His English is pretty remarkable now, like how much it's improved, and he can express himself really well and he understands everything, but, you need a bit of time, don't you? There was no well in response to this. He said, yeah, straight away. He was pleased to get the question. He was pleased to be able to say, in his totally charming, disarming, light Carlos Alcaraz way, yeah, thank you for noticing. I am actually really quite consistent now, and one loss to Bertik van der Zandschulp does not a mess of a tennis player make. That was what I read into that answer, and I thought it was a really great moment. And there was a lovely question where he's asked, because he was asked in his previous press conference about his English improving so much, and he said he'd made a real effort with it and watched lots of English TVs and movies, and he was asked today what they were, and you could see he was like, oh God, it was like, I've got to name a woman, I've got to name a film.
He was, because he'd said in the previous one series, and then today
he went, there were no series.
Actually, wasn't a series.
he couldn't think of a series, but he could. He panicked for a bit and then came up with Pulp Fiction. Then he said
Great
Good Will
film.
Hunting, which I found a very wholesome moment, because I love that film so much, and I wouldn't have thought that Carlos Alcaraz was a Good Will Hunting guy. But
I like it.
There you go.
I mean, Pulp Fiction's a bit of an interesting choice. I like that.
That surprises me less.
Oh, I think it's awesome.
And Shutter Island was the other one he mentioned.
Haven't seen it.
It was good. They're good films. They're good recommendations from Alcaraz. Who knows what series he's watching, though?
Nothing he wants to admit in a press conference, anyway.
Exactly. He's got Yuri Lehechka next. Has Alcaraz 7-6, 6-4, 2-6, 6-2 for Lehechka over Mannarino. Did Adrian Mannarino win the third set of this match just so Taylor Townsend and Barbora Krejcikova could play their match shadow-free?
That would be very considerate, wouldn't it?
And when he did win that third set, he jogged back to the chair. I thought, right, here we go. Adrian Mannarino, the comeback from 2-0 down is on.
And he went 2-love up.
Yeah, but he was jogging back to the chair to get treatment. Blooming medical timeout. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe this comeback isn't happening. He then did go 2-love up, and I thought, okay, the same guy doing the massage to Alcaraz has worked wonders on Mannarino as well. But no, like he was done. And I think Lehechka, I didn't watch every ball of this, but my sense was that those first 2 sets were obviously very tight in the score. Like, I think Lehechka was having to concentrate hard, was having to not let himself be frustrated by Mannarino. And after getting those first 2 sets in the bag, there was just a bit of a drop-off. It was like his focus went. He stopped being so patient, and that allowed Mannarino back into it. And suddenly, he's only 2 sets to 1 up, and he's a breakdown in the fourth, but he did well to get it back. And I think the Mannarino physical fade did play a part in that.
Yeah, although Jimmy Arias in commentary of this match said he thought that Adrian Mannarino expends so little energy playing his style of tennis that he'll be able to play into his 60s.
Because he doesn't swing.
He's not really hitting the ball. His arm is just there.
Puts the racket there, and the racket does all the work.
Allows the strings to do their trampoline thing.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So we have Lehechka and Alcaraz, a quarterfinal that's been set up today, and we have Djokovic against Fritz. Take 11. Is this Taylor Fritz's time? Novak Djokovic beat Jan-Lennard Struff 6-3, 6-3, 6-2 in the first match of the night in Arthur Ashe Stadium. In terms of a tennis match, this, not all that much to report. Jan-Lennard Struff, nothing like the player that we saw beat Francis Tiafoe and Holger Rune back-to-back. And I think maybe those back-to-back wins and the fact that he's 35 and it's all been a lot kind of physically and emotionally maybe played a part tonight, because he looked pretty flat, didn't he, and just not really able to get anything going. His first serve percentage was pretty low. Djokovic was once again playing beautifully but looking totally miserable and seemingly in physically quite a bad way.
Well, he was needing to get little neck rubs from the trainer. I think there is something there that's bothering him. He went 4-love up in this match, and it was the kind of form that he's been waiting for. He was just all the things that have made him the great champion that he is. Then he got broken back, and I think that irritated him. I think there were just 1 or 2 moments in the match that irritated him about things. But generally, look, his record before this was 7-0 against Struff for a reason. And you're right. Struff's big game needed to be absolutely perfect to cause him trouble, to even keep the score close like Rinderknecht did with Alcaraz. And he just wasn't close. All the way through, it was pretty comfortable for Djokovic. I asked Djokovic in his press conference, I thought, it's probably a bit early for this question, but I said to him, given the age you are now, 38, and all that you've done in the sport, and given what you'll have to get through, if you win this thing, would it be your greatest ever achievement? And he said, could be. And then he listed all the reasons why it's too far away to think about. Which is fair enough. You've still got to get through a quarter-final against Taylor Fritz, but he was bullish about his form. I think he's reassured about his form. But I remember thinking that a couple of times around Wimbledon and stuff like that, and then the canister was suddenly half empty. So it's going to be interesting. You ask, is it his time, Fritz? It's definitely his best chance. And I found it very interesting the way Fritz said you can discount the first 7. Because
he always says that.
Yeah,
I think it's fair enough.
I think
he's so compelling, Taylor Fritz. I really love the way he talks himself up ahead of these big matches, despite all the evidence suggesting he doesn't have much chance and that he should be carrying huge emotional baggage and tennis scar tissue into these matchups. I do believe that he is going to step onto court against Novak Djokovic, actually with fairly minimal scar tissue carried in his head, given the fact that he's 0-10 against this guy. I still think he's going to lose, but I really do love the way he talks himself up. And coming away from that press conference, I really did have to remind myself of how he talked about the matchup with Jannik Sinner ahead of the final last year, and how compelling I found that, and how that match ended up panning out. Like, words are words, and tennis is tennis. He had a very compelling breakdown of Tomas Machac's game as well, Matt.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, 4-3-3 for Fritz against Machac. He said, he made some mistakes at some good times for me. He can fluctuate quite a bit. His top level is super scary, but he can have some bad days. He's nailed him, hasn't he?
He's nailed it. Yeah, no notes. I'm gonna put it on the record. Tonight changed my mind a bit about Tomas Machac. Not that I don't still think that his top level, as Fritz is saying there, is amazing. I do, and I love watching it. But I might now be a bit more where you two are in terms of
whether it means
trust
anything,
or feeling that he can bring it in big matches.
Prove it, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's kind of what he said. I went to his press conference, Machac. I got in there a little bit after, like, late. I wasn't sure what the first question was. It was slightly awkward, but I asked him about, like, I said, the Draper match here last year, the Djokovic match in Australia.
That came with receipts.
And this one, I said, they've all had a similar feeling. You've come into them in red-hot form, playing brilliantly through the first few rounds, and then big match, big court, you've lost easily. I said, has there been a...
Brutal!
Maybe on reflection it was too savage. But I found his answer not very convincing. He just talked a lot about how well the other players played and needing experience because they've all got way much more experience than him. And I wanted to say, Jack Draper didn't have more experience than you, but I really didn't want to say that in the press conference.
No. I mean, Fritz did find his game tonight. He's been in a similar position to...
He served incredibly well.
Quite similar to Djokovic in as much as he's been a bit miffed that he's been having to scrap his way through. Tonight he played like Taylor Fritz of 2025. But Machac was really disappointing.
Yeah,
there's no way.
Loads of backhands.
There's no way of getting away from that.
Yeah, he freezes a bit on those big stages against the best players. Like, he's at his best when he's tucked away on an outside court
or at a smaller tournament,
and it's the kind of expressive, creative, explosive tennis that he's able to play. He doesn't look anything like that when he plays these sorts of matches. I know you're nodding at me like, yeah, Matt, we know this. We've seen it before. Why is it taking you so long to realise this? I've just been in denial, I suppose, because the tennis is so good. But, well, until it isn't.
We'll have more time to preview Djokovic against Fritz tomorrow, because that match will be played on Tuesday. But I feel like there's two questions. There's, can Fritz do something he's never done before and beat Novak Djokovic? And the second question is, well, if he can't, how much can he drain from his canister, or how much will he drain from his canister in the process of losing? Because of what you said, David, about having felt this way about Djokovic before in recent slams, and then in getting to face a Sinner or an Alcaraz. Here it would be Alcaraz rather in the semi-finals, and well, being outplayed because they're just that much better than him, but also just not having enough in the tank at that point, having played 5 best-of-5 set matches. So those are kind of the two facets to this match, I think.
I would be fascinated to know, and I think I mentioned it really early in the tournament, what would happen if Fritz could drag him into a 5th set, take it deep, use his youth, his physicality, and test the Djokovic physicality. I think he's got to be at the very least thinking like that. I mean, he was talking up how he doesn't want to just hang with these guys and wait for them to miss, because they don't. He was saying, I've got to take it from them, which I understand and I agree, but and that's in a sort of micro sense. In a macro sense, I think you've got to be able to think about trying to drain his canister for your benefits, not for anybody else's down the line, because if you can get him into a fifth set, it's a big question mark these days about Djokovic. It used to be, you played right into his hands. My sense is that Djokovic has found the form he needs now, but I'm certainly not as convinced as I used to be. I think this is a live contest.
Okay, we'll talk about it more tomorrow. Join us in part 3 and we'll talk about tomorrow's order of play. Welcome back to the Tennis Podcast and part 3 of today's show, and I'll look ahead to tomorrow. Well, today's order of play, it's 37 minutes past midnight. Here we are. Sabrina Carpenter's ringing out around the place. Not sure whose benefit that is for, but we're
the only ones here.
Here we are. Tomorrow, what do we have? We start in the Arthur Ashe Stadium once again at 11:30 with Felix Auger-Aliassime against Andrei Rublev. Arthur Ashe.
Yeah, quite pleased for them. You know, it's going to be interesting to see which one of them grabs it.
Yeah, I wonder if it'd be one of those matches where just like the weight of the opportunity is just hanging over it.
It could be bad.
I think it could be quite bad. I think it could be long and bad.
Be cool to see Marat Safin.
It might not be. It might not be.
Be cool to see Marat Safin on Arthur. You might not recognise him, but he will presumably be there.
Yes. Yep, he'll be there.
Second on Ashe in the day session, as we maybe thought it would be, Naomi Osaka against Coco Gauff, and that'll be on ESPN 1 here in the US, whereas had it been a night session match, it would have been relegated to ESPN 2, because I presume football of some kind is happening. Some other American sport must be happening that takes precedence over the tennis. So I very much do understand that scheduling, and the place is going to be absolutely electric for that. I think I know what David's prediction is. Yeah,
it is for Naomi Osaka to win, as she mounts her challenge for the title that she will end up holding.
Matt, which way are you going to go?
I heard Mary Carrillo predict Naomi Osaka to win today as well. I'm going to go Gauff. Far be it from me to go against Mary Carrillo and David, but I set myself up there to sound like an absolute idiot. Why did I do that? But I am going to go Gauff. Just, she's so good at winning tennis matches. You know, I thought David put it really well in terms of where the battleground is here, and you know, I just think. I think Gauff's in good enough form for her not to get blown away here, and therefore I think she comes out on top in the big moments.
Can Osaka handle the big moments?
Yeah.
In the night session on Arthur Ashe on Monday, we start with Jannik Sinner taking on the only man other than Carlos Alcaraz to have beaten him in 2025, Alexander Bublik. Hasn't had his serve broken all tournament, Bublik, David. Hasn't faced Jannik Sinner, but still.
No, I mean, it will require Bublik to play as well as he can to do what I think he might well end up doing, which is win. But
hang on, you think Bublik might win?
Yes. Yeah, I think Bublik, if he comes out and plays, because I'm not 100% convinced at the moment by Jannik Sinner. Now, it's very possible that Sinner comes out and does what Djokovic did today and what Fritz did and Sabalenka, and says, right, quarterfinals, new tournament, this is where we separate the real champions from you lot, right? That could well happen for Jannik Sinner tomorrow. But the way Bublik's serving, if he plays like that, he's going to keep it close, and he's a nightmare to play against. And this is not clay. You know, this is going to benefit his big power game. I know he likes clay, but still. And I think he might just ambush him.
Wow.
I feel ambushed. Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, tournament turning on its head tomorrow, says David.
What says Matt?
I'm going to go Sinner. Yeah, I'm more convinced. You know, I'm not reading as much, I don't think, into that Shapovalov match.
Yeah, David is so shook by the world number one losing a set to Denis Shapovalov.
I mean,
it
did shake me.
Yeah.
And also it reminded me of Dimitrov. And then I think, well, hold on, Bublik's got more foul power than either of them.
I think Bublik is this might be a controversial take. I think he's the second most likely player in the draw to beat Jannik Sinner. I think this is a dangerous match.
Yeah.
I feel like, given the circumstance of the draw, like if he was playing Novak Djokovic tomorrow, I'd give Novak Djokovic more chance than Bublik. But given that he's going to face Novak Djokovic after Djokovic has had to come through Fritz and then probably Alcaraz, I think Sinner would do what he's done to a depleted Novak Djokovic in their last several meetings. Bublik, though, with his big serve, his unpredictable game, is very, very tricky. Sinner is going to have to play well tomorrow. He's going to have to play better than he did in the first half of the match against Shapovalov. I do agree with that. I just think he will. And I just think he'll be able to win the big moments and stop Bublik from doing all the things he can do. Because Bublik needs to be loose and he needs to be comfortable, I think, to be able to do some of those things. And I think Sinner might stop him feeling like that.
Final match on Ash tomorrow, Amanda Anisimova against Beatrice Haddad-Schmeier. Your level of confidence, Matt, in one word, in Amanda Anisimova?
High.
Like it. Armstrong tomorrow. It's another one of these 4 match sessions all in one. Incredible ticket on Armstrong tomorrow. Leandro Reedy against Alex de Minaur is first up. Then it's Ekaterina Alexandrova against Iga Swiatek. Swiatek's first outing on Armstrong tomorrow. Interesting. That.
I mean, I think she'll be pleased it's day session. You know, I wonder whether there was any kind of, you know, similar thing put to her as you described as being put to Sabalenka. Big eyes emoji on that, though. I do think that's dangerous. And actually, it's annoying, the schedule tomorrow, that 3 women's matches are all going to be on at the same time. We're going to have, you know, likely, you know, we don't quite know how long all the matches will go, but that might clash with Osaka Goff, and then there's Mukova Kostyuk on as well, and I don't know, I want to be able to watch all of those, but yeah, it's a very interesting slate of matches tomorrow on the women's side, especially.
The good news for you as a Lorenzo Musetti fan is that his match against Jaume Munar is likely to clash with Intentionally Blank
on the Arthur Ashe Stadium.
On the Arthur Ashe Stadium, yeah.
That is
you'll be free to watch that.
Yeah,
and finally,
he's in the Machac slot.
Finally, on Armstrong tomorrow, possibly the biggest draw of the day. Over there for Armstrong ticket holders and grounds pass holders that can get onto the upper tier on that court as well. Venus Williams and Leylah Fernandez in doubles against Ekaterina Alexandrova, double dipping on Armstrong tomorrow.
Back on
and Zheng Shuai.
Armstrong.
Yeah, incredible. And that schedule means the fact that they've put the Venus Williams double on Armstrong means that a singles match has to be relegated to grandstand, and the one they've chosen is Marta Kostyuk against Karolina Mukova, which will be fantastic on Armstrong, but it is a shame and a little bit of a burn.
Yeah, that they're being sort of singled out. I mean, yeah. I think if I had to pick a singles match tomorrow,
it's de Minaur Reedy.
I think it's that one. I mean, potentially it's Musetti Munar.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those two. I guess, you know, they want the 2 best of 5 on Armstrong is my assumption.
Tell you what, Mukova will be pleased about it from a court playing perspective, because she really enjoyed it the other day, I think, against Noskova. You know, that's the court she was on.
Yeah.
We'll see. That is all to look forward to tomorrow. We've had the news today that Daniil Medvedev has jettisoned his whole team, split with coach Gilles Savara, his coach of more than a decade that he's had pretty much all of his success with. I think it's no huge surprise, but it is still like a big decision for Daniil Medvedev to have made. I'm sure we'll have more time to talk about that at another point, either in this tournament or in the many, many podcasts that we have to come for the rest of the year and beyond. For now, though, hello to our mascots, Phoebe, Maisie and Roger. Hello to our top folks and executive producers, Greg, Chris and Jeff. We are part of the Athletic Podcast Network. We're leaving shout-outs because we got a bus to catch. You've heard that before, haven't you? I'm going to go and have an argument with an American bus coordinator.
With a climate change denier.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tough scene a couple of nights ago. Let's hope for a smoother journey home tonight. Thank you for listening, folks. If I don't get my accreditation confiscated tonight for getting into it with a climate change denier, we'll be back tomorrow.